Gardening Indoor and Under Glass by F. Rockwell, 1917. So this stuff is not the latest science, so take what's in here with a grain of salt, but it is gardening indoors and under glass. Too few people realize the possibilities for enjoyment in prolonging the garden through the winter months indoors. A practical guide to the planting, care, and propagation of houseplants, and to the construction and management of hotbed, cold frame, and small greenhouse, by F. Rockwell, author of Home Vegetable Gardening. 1912. So again, 1912, we have a lot more science now. So this is this stuff has been superseded by other things. Forward. There is nothing which adds so much sunshine and cheer to the rooms of a house besieged by winter and all his dreary encampment of snow and ice as the greenery, color, and fragrance of blossoming plants. There is no pastime quite so full of pleasure and constant interest as this sort of horticulture. The rooting of small slips, the repotting and watering and watching as new growth develops and buds unfold. Some have the magic gift that everything they touch will break into blossom. Others strive, perhaps too hard, only to gain indifferent results. It is hoped that this book will aid those of the second class to locate past mistakes and progress to future success, and further that it may indicate to those more fortunate ones of the first class the way to more extensive achievements in the work they love. This is not a technical book, simply an attempt to tell in so plain a way that they cannot be misunderstood the everyday details of the successful management of plants in the house and within such small glass structures as may be made, even with limited means and time, a part of the average home. There is another aspect of the case worth considering, so much so, in fact, that it is one of the reasons for writing this book. By the use of such modest glass structures as almost everyone can afford, not only is the scope of winter gardening enlarged and the work rendered more easy and certain, but the opportunity is given to make this light labor pay for itself. Fresh vegetables out of season are always acceptable, and well-grown plants find a ready sale among one's flower-loving friends. Cranmere, August 1st, 1912. Contents. Part 1, Plants in the House. Introduction, the proper conditions, light, temperature, and moisture. Chapter 3, Soils, Manures, and Fertilizers. 4, Starting plants from seed. 5, Starting plants from cuttings. 6, Transplanting, potting, and repotting. 7, Management of houseplants. 8, Flowering plants. 9, Shrubs, 10, Foliage plants. 11, Vines, 12, Ferns, 13, Palms, 14, Cacti, 15, Bulbs. 16, Veranda boxes, window boxes, vases, and hanging baskets. 17, Houseplant insects and diseases. 18, Accessories. Part 2 is Home Glass. Chapter 19 is its opportunities. 20, the cold frame and the hot bed. Chapter 21, the construction of conservatories and small greenhouses. 22, methods of heating. 23, management. 24, flowers. 25, vegetables. And 26, vegetable and bedding plants for spring. Lots of illustrations. I'm not going to read the names of all the illustrations now. I'll read the titles of the illustrations when they show up. Part 1, Plants in the House. Chapter 1, Introduction. Today the garden is in the zenith of its glory. The geraniums and salvias blaze in the autumn sun. The begonias have grown to a small forest of beautiful foliage and bloom. The heliotropes have become almost little trees and load the air with their delicate fragrance. Tonight, who knows? Grim winter may fling the first fleet-winged detachment of his advance across the land. By every roadside and into every garden close, and tomorrow there will be but blackening ruins and burned bivouacs where the 1,000 camps of summer planted their green and purple in the golden haze. And what provision, when that inevitable day of summer's defeat comes, have you made for saving part of the beauty and joy of your garden, of carrying some rescued plants into the safe stronghold of your house, like minstrels to make merry and cheer the clouded days until the long siege is over, and spring, rejuvenescent, comes to rout the snows? I do not know which is the more commonly overlooked, the importance and fun of keeping the living rooms of the house cheerful with plants and flowers in winter, or the certainty and economy with which it may be done if one will use the plain common sense methods necessary to make plants succeed. Too much care and coddling is just as sure to make growth forlorn and sickly as too much neglect. That may be one reason why one frequently sees such healthy-looking plants framed in the dismal window of a factory tenement, where the chinks can never be stopped tight and the occupants find it hard enough to keep warm, while at the same time it is easy to find leafless and lanky specimens in the superheated and moistureless air of drawing rooms. It certainly is true that many modern houses of the better sort do not offer very congenial conditions to the healthy growth of plants. It is equally certain that in many cases these conditions may be changed by different management in such way that they would be not only more healthy for plants to live in, but so also for their human occupants. In many other cases, there is nothing but lack of information or energy in the way of constructing a place entirely suitable for the growth of plants. To illustrate what I mean, I mention the following instance of how one person made a suitable place in which to grow flowers. 2 narrow storm windows, which had been discarded, were fastened at right angles to the sides of the dining room windows, and the regular storm sash screwed on to these. Here were the 3 glass sides of a small conservatory. 1/2-inch boards made a bottom and roof, the former being supported by brackets to give strength, and the latter put on with 2 slanting side pieces nailed to the top of the upright narrow sash spoken of, to give the roof a pitch. Top and bottom were covered with old flexible rubber matting, which was carried back under the clapboards, making a weatherproof, tight joint with the side of the house. 6-inch light wooden shelves on the inside gave a conservatory of considerable capacity. How many houses there are where some such arrangement could be made as the result of a few hours' work and thought, and a very small expense. And yet how infrequently one sees anything of the kind. In many instances, such a glassed-in window would be all that is needed, sufficient heat being furnished by a radiator under the window within the house. In the case mentioned, however, it was necessary to heat the small greenhouse. This was done by installing a small gas stove in the cellar, as nearly as possible under the window greenhouse. Over this stove a large tin hood was fitted, with a sliding door in front to facilitate lighting and regulating the stove. From the hood, a 6-inch pipe enclosed in a wood casing for insulation ran through the cellar window and up into the floor of the conservatory, ending in a small radiator. These details are given not with the idea that they can be duplicated exactly, although in many instances they might, but to show what a little ingenuity and effort will accomplish in the way of overcoming difficulties. Nor is the reward for such efforts as these restricted to the growing of a few more plants. From the actual accomplishments described in the second part of this book, the reader must see that it is entirely possible and feasible for one with only average advantages to have during a large part, or even all of the year, not only flowers which cannot be grown to advantage in the house, but also such vegetables as lettuce, radishes, tomatoes, and cucumbers, and others if desired, and also to give the flower and vegetable gardens such a start as would never be possible otherwise. Do not attempt too much, but do not be content with too little, when only a slight increase in planning and work will bring such a tremendous increase in results and happiness. I feel confident that there is not one home out of 10 where more thought and more information brought to bear on the things whereof this book treats would not yield a greater return in actual pleasure than any other equal investment which could be made. Do not be impatient to get to a description of all the results at once. Do not skip over the chapters on dirt and manures and pots and other seemingly uninteresting things, because in a thorough understanding of these essentials lies the foundation of success. And if a condition of soil or an operation in handling plants does not seem clear to you as you read it over, remember that in all probability it will become so when you actually attempt the work described. Nothing worthwhile is ever won without a little, and often a great deal, of patient work. And what is more worthwhile than to keep busy in the constant improvement and beautifying of one's daily surroundings?